There was an article this morning about Oxford and Cambridge exams, and for generations, the university admissions process has functioned as a sort of academic Hunger Games where A levels are king, and the ability to sit in a silent hall and regurgitate memorized facts determines the fate of thousands of hopeful applicants. But what if this model, far from being the great meritocratic sorting hat that we imagine it to be, is actually an instrument of exclusion? What if we are year after year overlooking talent because we're missing potential in a way that is narrow, outdated, and dare I say socially and culturally biased? Now, when I was when I was looking at the Oxbridge exams when I was a child, there was a movement to doing the exams just in the year before we took the A levels, and then we were often given offers for university on the most ridiculous A level results, and some people indeed did get E's and were then offered their place and were then taking up their place because the sort of potential that a university is looking for is different to the potential or indeed the success a school is looking for, and that has changed now. So universities now have to recognise that they're part of the same conveyor belt, the same sausage machine, and everybody venerates the A level as a salute to, or the IB as a salute to the progress that the student will make at university, and then they're surprised when it doesn't work. In most cases it works, but in some cases, in the exceptional cases, the really good university student is not a terribly good school student, and it's important to be able to see the potential that is lurking, the late developers or the odd developers. And a good university should be able to catch those people. And the current process in Oxford and Cambridge doesn't allow for that. Yes, all the decisions are made at interview stage, but because of the exam process, you only get to see students who have got through that exam weeding out. And the recent debate about shifting away from exclusive reliance on predicted grades and unseen timed examinations to a more inclusive assessment model has sparked controversy, and critics claim it's dumbing down education, while supporters argue it's a necessary evolution to ensure that students from all backgrounds have an equitable chance to demonstrate their potential. In fact, we're moving back to what it was in the past. So we need to unpack what is really at stake here. At the heart of this debate lies an uncomfortable question: are traditional exams inherently biased? Do they disproportionately reward those who have been trained, groomed, and prepared for the format, mainly students from privileged backgrounds, while penalising those who have not had access to the same resources? And the statistics suggest that the answer is yes. Research consistently shows attainment gaps between white middle-class students and their peers from disadvantaged and minority backgrounds. And A-level predictions, which are often inaccurate, work against students who may have the intellectual ability but lack the perfect record expected by the system. Once at university, black students and those from working class backgrounds are statistically less likely to achieve firsts or 2-1s despite similar entry qualifications. The problem isn't intelligence, it's the system of evaluation itself, both in getting into university and in fulfilling the university criteria once you're there, in getting the degree. So the solution proposed by universities like Oxford and Cambridge is a shift towards inclusive assessment, open book exams, coursework, take-home papers, greater emphasis on interviews. And the aim is not to dilute standards, but to broaden the ways in which students can showcase their intellectual capability, because in the end, that's what universities must look for. Not the ability to keep doing exams, because in the end, you've got to recognise exams are fairly useless. Critics argue that removing timed, unseen exams will erode rigour. But consider this: does sitting in a hall for 3 hours writing until your hand cramps really test your ability to think critically? Or does it simply reward those who are better at exam technique? And do we measure the effectiveness of a doctor or an engineer, a historian, by how well they perform under artificial time constraints, or by their ability to think deeply, analyse evidence, and construct compelling arguments? I think we do the latter. And Yes, there's a good deal which is important in memory, and a good university and a good school will be able to teach students how to memorize things for exams. You can coach students into exams. But open book exams, of course, if you've got a textbook in front of you, if you've got notes in front of you, that's a different test. It's a different skill set, assessing understanding rather than rote memorization. And a well designed take home paper can test critical thinking, synthesis, and research skills in a way that a closed room exam never could. We shouldn't pretend that the corporate world, where many of these students will end up, operates in the same high pressure model as a school exam. No CEO or barrister has ever been told they have 90 minutes, no notes, and one chance to make their case. Regardless of how students are assessed, one thing remains unchanged. Decisions are made in the interview room. This is where universities determine a student's potential, their ability to think on their feet, engage in debate, apply knowledge in real time. And the mistake we have been making is that we restrict access to the interview room based on a flawed system of prejudgment, one that excludes students who have potential but whose grades do not reflect it. And if we're truly committed to fairness, we should be widening that net, giving unexpected and unprepared students a chance to step into that room. And interviews should not be the preserve of the polished and the prepped. They should be spaces where raw talent is uncovered, in the same way as raw talent is uncovered in the tutorial system, where you meet your tutor once a week and go through the topic that you've prepared. One of the most amusing contradictions in this debate is that it's happening at a time when universities are battling with the rise of AI-generated essays and ChatGPT-assisted coursework, and critics of inclusive assessment warn that take-home exams invite cheating. But they overlook the fact that AI is already infiltrating traditional forms of assessment. At least an oral interview or properly designed open book exam ensures that students must actually understand and apply knowledge rather than outsourcing their thinking to a chatbot. None of this is to say that traditional exams should be scrapped entirely. They still serve as a purpose in some disciplines and for certain skill sets, but they should not be the sole or even the primary determinant for university admissions and success in a university degree. A blended approach, one that includes coursework, open book exams, oral presentations, and interviews, would create a fairer and more accurate way of assessing ability. And the purpose of education is not to reward those who are best at playing the system. It's to identify and nurture potential, to find that raw talent, to find those people, just those very few people, who will go on and do important research. And if we persist in clinging to a narrow and exclusive model, we risk turning our universities into institutions that measure privilege rather than promise.